Welcome back to the Florida Band Podcast. You know why you're here. I'm Christian Gordon, band director at Westglades Middle School in Parkland, Florida.
I'm Andrew Lopez, the band director at Coniston Middle School in West Palm Beach.
And I'm AJ Arcia, band director at Coral Springs Middle School in Coral Springs, Florida.
AJ, is it Arcia or Arcia?
What did I just say?
It sounded like Arcia.
Arcia.
It's Arcia.
Arcia. It's Arcia like Garcia.
More often,
Garcia.
yeah, Arcia. That's what I say.
Arcia like Garcia.
Yeah.
Without the G.
Right.
Arcia,
but more often than not, I get called Garcia.
How's everybody doing? I'm currently, if my audio's bad, I'm currently visiting family in South Carolina. I had to take a whole week off of school, which has had its ups and downs, but probably mostly up. It's been nice to experience some cold weather. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. My AC gave out on Monday, so I've been without AC.
You're getting the opposite of cold weather.
Yeah, it's not fun. I've been without AC for about a week. And then also
you should anamorph into a lizard. You'll be fine.
You're not. You know it. And then also freaking my refrigerator died on Sunday. I mean, school's been fine. It's been really, really busy. I regret it because like a month ago, y'all remember when I was making fun of Bandtober?
Yeah.
Now it's over.
Yeah, the band gods laughed at me, man. Like it was, we had all county jazz auditions and marching band MPA, 2 football games, lots of practices, a concert, middle school band night, starting jazz band. It was a lot. And I don't know what band god. I think I upset the Sousa gods, and I regret it.
How you doing, AJ?
We're doing all right. This whole week I was like suffering with some kind of sinus cold or something. It was not fun. But I really think that we made some good strides this week with both the beginning band and my combined group. They're starting to get the basics and the fundamentals of what we talked about last time, and they're just trying to apply what we've already been taught. So
you've been working them Fundies?
Yeah. So
that's good.
We're going back in the book. We're going back into our beginning band book. We're just trying to apply all the things that we talk about to little 8-measure, excerpts. If we can do it there, we can definitely try and do it in a piece of music. So I think next week, we're still going to be in the book, but I think I'm going to start introducing some music to them.
So to recap the last episode, we talked about fundamentals, and we talked about in Florida how we have the 3 boxes for our music performance assessment evaluation. And in box 1 is tone, balance, and blend, and we talked about that. But of course, we didn't talk about it without talking about breathing. And all of us shared some breathing exercises and ideas, so on and so forth. And then we also talked about how we incorporate teaching tone, balance, and blend, how balance and blend are kind of the same thing and go hand in hand. And today we're going to talk about the rest of box 1. And then we're going to talk about box 2. Box 1 is, AJ, can you confirm? Box 1 is music fundamentals?
Yeah, it's performance fundamentals. And then box 2 is technical preparation.
Okay. So we're going to finish talking about performance fundamentals, and then we'll move to technical preparation.
So the next topic on the list is band sonority. And like I don't know how you guys describe it to your kids, and we'll get into that. The way I describe band sonority, and we can talk about it, is band sonority is the summation of doing all of those things. But also talking about band sonority, I talk about the idea of resonance, because that's what it is, because it's about son, which is, sonar. To be sonorous is to have a resonant sound. So, to talk about resonant sound, I say it's a summation of all the other fundamentals, because in order to have resonance, your wavelengths need to be vibrating at the same wavelength. That's intonation. And it needs to be a nice open sound to where the sound waves have space to move. That's tone. In order to have a good tone, you need to be using lots of air. And when the sound waves are matching, like we talked about in the last episode, you know, I explain balance as listening vertically. You listen up and you listen down, and you balance accordingly depending where you are in the pyramid. Should you choose to use the pyramid. And then blend is horizontal. You listen across your section and you listen across your voice part, and then you fit your sound to blend to the largest bell. That's typically, so I tell them, when you're doing all of those things, you can, and you're lining up your sound waves in every possible way, then you can create a sonorous sound. And then the final piece of sonority is the breathing, because it, when you release with a breath, that's an open release, and that allows the sound waves to go out into the audience and go out into the, interact with the sound panels, and then you get a big sonorous sound. So that's typically how I teach sonority. I'm like, if if we hear a ring, if you hear overtones, if you're hearing, if you hear that clarity of sound, and it's nice and full, that's what I dictate as band sonority.
That would definitely line up with what I would tell my kids too. The whole thing about resonance is what band sonority is. You can't really achieve resonance without the things that we talked about before, right? So when we have, breathing, tone, balance, blend, all those things contribute to having, a sonorous sound or having sonority. So I definitely touch on the pyramid of sound, or whatever we called it last time, the Dorito chip of, what was it?
Oh God.
Yeah, something like that.
But I definitely touch on that. I tell them that everything that we do, including intonation, your tone, just everything, contributes to having this sonorous sound. And I think just kind of showing them examples. I think what I might do this year is just kind of pull up a couple YouTube videos that I'll look up, just with like some really good releases. I feel like that's, for me, that was always like the easiest concept to grasp about like having sonority and having resonance, was that release point after, a big moment or something like that. That always resonated with me, no pun intended.
Well, it's modeling.
We're going to talk about releases as well.
Yeah.
When we get to box 2.
But that's modeling, you show them like a crown video.
Right.
Show them any crown in the lot video, the full volume excerpt, and like, that's called releases. And like, and you can talk about, it's nice and big, and depending on where they are, you can hear that echo.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what you guys said. So words that I like to use when I talk about sonority is resonance. I like to talk about having a vibrant sound. I also talk about having a directional sound or an energetic sound. How every note you play and every melody you play is going somewhere or coming from somewhere. And I think that should lead to what you guys were talking about, overtones, a ring. Another thing I talk about is the audience or whoever's listening, and also the players, should feel the sound within themselves. They should feel it in their chest, or, something like that. They should feel it resonating through their bodies, not just when they play, but also when they're listening. And just like you guys said, it does definitely involve having a great tone, intonation, balance, and blend. The way I like to teach sonority is getting a really good sonorous sound in our fundamentals time, and then transferring that same skill to maybe an impact point or a climax point, or just like a place in the music where everyone's playing in unison, maybe holding a note or the downbeat of a climax point in the music, and transferring that to that point into the music, so that they can hear that you can sound the same way in the music as well. And definitely modeling and using sound examples. If you can show them anything or have them listen to any group that plays with really good sonority or with a really good blended sound, is definitely good for them. They start to go, oh my goodness, they sound amazing.
Do y'all have like, aside from the crown videos, I like to find videos of Kaminsky's bands playing the tonality shift.
The The god of sonority. Yeah.
But like, because when Chris Sharp wrote the tonality exercises with his band in mind, and of all the recordings, like even the professional recording on YouTube is his Buchholz band. And
yes,
I show that to them. I'm like, y'all hear, and the other word that I use is brilliance, because like especially when you have the ring of the high woodwinds up top in tune with the lows at the bottom, it's a brilliant sound. It's like it's not bright, but there's like there's a shimmer to it, and
there's like because there's a clarity. Because what's amazing about Kaminsky's bands is he teaches all his kids to sound the same.
Yeah.
So like all the trumpets, they aim to have the same tone, and that just takes the sound of the overall group to another level.
Yeah.
And he got that from Japan. And so to piggyback off what you were saying, Andrew, is I definitely use those examples. There's also some stuff on his Facebook page. If you're friends with Alex Kaminsky, there's some stuff from his Eagle Regiment group that's just absolutely incredible. But then I also pull up some of those Japanese bands, especially the ones that do the band fundamentals, like the Bravo music, brain music type thing. They sound just absolutely incredible. I show that to them as well.
Yeah. When we were first teaching the concept and the vocabulary of sonority, we usually get it in a long tone. But it's like Christian, like you said, I like pointing out in the music when we get to those spots and be like, and I'll go, we'll release. And I'll go, you hear that? Sonority. And they're, he's right. And like, and then we try to mimic it and then they don't do it again. But then it's just a matter of constantly pointing out those moments and where they can happen in the music. Usually at this point in the year, we're mainly just focusing on the other 5.
Honestly, I think we hit it all. I think, those things are all important to contributing how we portray what, band sonority is. So our next topic is physical articulation. That's the next performance fundamental. It's actually the last performance fundamental in box 1. And so with physical articulation, it's nice because I'm actually just now starting to really get into details with the beginners about physical articulation. The one that I always kind of go to is that tip of the tongue, tip of the reed, or tip of the tongue, tip of the teeth kind of thing. They all get a kick out of trying to say it. And then usually I get a couple kids who can really say it, and I say that's really, really good. And, we do it every day, and we've actually done it every day this week. I've found that, the results are pretty are good when we just visualize and we talk about it. I also say, having those first 3 taste buds as that kind of center point for how you articulate, that's going to dictate, that's like a good baseline for dictating how much you articulate for each note. Now that physical articulation in box 1, I think I did, correct me if I'm wrong, did we talk about that a little bit before?
Yeah.
I feel like we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so that physical articulation, I think it's just about the syllables that are being used, what the judges can hear from their end about, whether students are using kind of like a thicker tongue or that kind of tip of the tongue thing where it's not quite the clarity of it. It's the actual physical aspect of articulation. How is the muscle of the tongue moving every time that you need to articulate? So, and like I said before, with my bands, I just go ahead and I tell them, tip of the tongue to the tip of the reed or tip of the tongue to the tip of the teeth. And then we go ahead and determine what our articulation syllables are. And each student within each section should know exactly which syllable they use. And that's pretty much what I do for physical articulation. Christian, what do you do?
A lot of that same stuff, the tip of the tongue, I just say instead of tip of the teeth, I say top of the teeth, where the teeth meet the gums. Mm-hmm. But to kind of differentiate from you, I talk about how the tongue or the articulation is not the initiator of the sound, but a decoration of the sound, or like it ornaments the sound. It ornaments the air. It should never interrupt the airflow. But the amount that that it actually does depends on the articulation marking. And our default articulation is always legato. Let's see what else.
Real quick, can I just add one more thing?
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
So you said something
that's
that I
pretty
just
much all
remembered.
I had.
I always go back to this analogy. I forget who told me. I think it might have been my middle school band director, Edgar Rubio. He told us one day that, you know, the air that we use to play is like a faucet with pretty good water pressure. You turn it on and it's just there. And then your articulation should be like your finger running through that running water quickly.
Yep.
And so the water never stops. It's like a millisecond of just a separation. But even still, the water connects. So it's kind of like the air is consistently flowing. Yes. And the kids just all kind of look at each other after I say that and like nod their heads. And they're like, yeah, I get that now. And what's cool is that I actually have a sink in the band room. And I'll just, you know, demonstrate for them. And they'll be like, oh, okay, I get it now. So that's going back to the air thing.
We describe that as whole note air.
Yeah.
And so when we get to line 2 in the book, I have them draw an arrow through their quarter notes, and then they write the words whole note air. Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I use a lot of what both you guys do as well. I definitely talk about whole note air. You know, like what we've been doing recently, because we're on physical articulation as well. You know, we've, you know, reviewing it, just making sure it's consistent. We'll have them play line 1 on small instruments when I first introduce it. And then we'll have them play line 2 on small instruments, and I'll say blow it like a whole note. Use whole note air. You know, if your air is stopping, it's no good. What I like to do when I'm teaching physical articulation for the very first time, I'll have them hold up a sheet of paper, and they will blow into the sheet of paper. And as they're blowing that air, I tell them, you know, I tell them do it slowly so they can get the practice of focusing the right muscles and the coordination. But I tell them, you know, if the paper is falling, your air is stopping. If the paper is not falling, your air is continuing. Christian's doing it now. You see that? You see what I'm talking about?
I like that.
So I have them hold it close to their face, so that way, no matter how little air they're using or how much air they're using, it does respond the way it's supposed to. So then I do that. We transfer that to small instruments, and I get them blowing just, you know, slow half notes on a small instrument. Then we go to line 2, and I'll just tell them blow it like a whole note. You know, it should feel the same. Tip of the tongue at the top of the teeth for sure. Tip of the tongue at the top of the tip of the reed. For low brass, I tell them tip of the tongue halfway down the teeth, because that also forces them to open up their mouth to make sure that enough sound is coming through. You know, I've heard some tuba players even talk about, you know, Christian, you remember, I don't know if you remember when we went to SumCon 2 years ago, there was that tuba guy that was talking tip of the tongue towards the bottom of the teeth. Not bottom, like bottom of the jaw, but bottom of the top teeth. You remember that?
Maybe faintly.
Yeah, so I picked that up, and that's helped a lot with getting tubas to just get more sound out while articulating, so they're not crushing their teeth.
That was a good clinic.
Yeah, that was a great one. And then, you know, we talk about, I do mention it's legato. You want to use as little taste buds as possible. You know, I'm like, taste buds are microscopic. Think about how much little tongue. And the thing I also talk about, I've started talking about the past couple of years, is you keep your mouth open while you're tonguing. And even though it's a DAW articulation, the focus is on the AH, is DAW. And when, you know, I'll have my mouth open, I'll go da, 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 da. You can see my tongue moving and my mouth never closed. That is how we tongue. And, you know, and you can tongue faster that way, because I say give enough room for the tongue to move. And you can move it however you need to in whatever space is required based off the music. And then we just rep it 1,000 times, and that's it.
All right, cool. Now we're going to move on to box 2. And within box 2 is called, actually, we talked about what it's called. Can you remind us, AJ, what it's called? What box 2 is called?
Technical preparation. Very cool. Okay, and within that box is note accuracy, rhythmic accuracy. It's tight, bro.
Yes.
Precision, entrances, releases, interpretive articulation, and clarity of articulation. We're going to start with note and rhythmic accuracy, which the three of us agreed is just literacy, music literacy. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to performance assessment. I think Andrew, you said, yeah, if you have wrong notes and rhythms, it's like automatically a good.
Yeah, it's a C.
Because I mean, if you think about it, you know, you're preparing these pieces, and if your students still don't know what they're playing, they don't know the right notes, they don't know the right rhythms, you know, you're not very prepared. You know, in my mind, it's kind of a baseline. I understand everybody's situation is different, and you could be rehearsing for months on a piece of music, but if the students aren't receptive to what you're teaching them, yeah, they could still end up playing wrong notes and rhythms. I get that, but to really talk about how we teach and prepare students to be successful at note and rhythmic accuracy or music literacy for this box, we talked about, I think when we were talking about fitting beginners or our pacing and things like that a couple episodes ago, we talked about how we start with like note naming quizzes, and we talk about doing a music theory type of lesson or something like that for our students when they start out as beginners, and we kind of front load a lot of that literacy. We do rhythm, you know, first or second day of school, and we do it every day. We front load a lot of that literacy before they get the instruments in their hands, so that while they are learning all the awkwardness of holding and playing the instrument and trying to sound good, they're not worried about also having to learn rhythm and also having to learn note names and things like that. And then that continues throughout all of beginning band, the note naming a song and counting songs before that we actually play them as a group, and transferring that to our music rehearsal as well, like our concert music rehearsal as well. They also use the same practice steps of note naming and counting and so on. So that's kind of how we do it. But and the last thing I would add to that is it's a never-ending quest, you know, for 7th graders, 8th graders, or your veteran students. Never stop teaching them and expecting them and requiring them to be able to read their music fluently and precisely. Constantly be having them sight read, constantly have them do, sight reading and learning new scales and learning new rhythms and combinations of rhythms and things like that. What do you have, Andrew?
A lot of the same stuff. You know, we all three of us use the same quizzes, and we all three of us use the same expectations at the beginning of the year.
Thank you, Kaylin, for making those quizzes.
Yes. Oh my God. You know, and then also making sure, you know, the spelling. I was talking with another Title I band director, and we were saying the only difference in literacy, because literacy is free, first off. So it's not okay to use your circumstances in your school, regardless of what they are. I teach in a Title I middle school, everybody, so I understand what it means to deal with challenges. But it's the idea of literacy is free. So how you teach it, you know, you need to be creative in terms of spelling. There is a scientific proven study that students with lower reading levels also cannot read music better. It takes longer to connect those synapses if their reading level is severely undercut. So you'll find you have a lot of people, like let's say on FSAs, kids scoring 1s and 2s in literacy in ELA, they struggle with learning rhythm or learning note names. Rhythms is fine. But to counteract that, I think Christian, you stole it for our level 1 pass-offs this year, is kids spell everything. If you're, you know, in my
have
band,
them note name everything.
If you are going to pass something until level 3, they're good. But like level 2, I started doing it for level 2 because like you said, the 7th graders were a little deficient at the beginning of the year, and I was like, all right, y'all, spell it. I don't care.
The reason I don't do it on level 2 is because I already have them note naming their scales.
That
so
too,
I don't have
but
them note name the lines in the book.
For me, it's the transfer, because like they'll look at their scale and be like, oh yeah, that's E flat's 4th space E flat, and then they'll see it in a piece of music and go, what's that note? I'm like, are you, bro? But
that's
so
true. Yeah.
I have them spell everything so they can just get it in every context. You know, I tell the students for performance assessment, great bands don't play wrong notes. And sometimes even in performances, I tell them it's not even a knowledge thing. It's a focus thing. I'd be like, I know you know that's A flat, but you missed it. The judges don't care that you missed it, but they don't know whether or not you know it. You what you showed them is you don't, so they mark you as a C. Good job. That's pretty much how I do it, with the exception of we just spell a lot more just to fight those deficiencies.
I think that with just the concept of literacy, especially coming out of COVID, I don't know, I feel like there's more kids that are, more often than not, they're a little bit behind the curve when it comes to the note naming and the rhythmic accuracy, so I've been trying to hammer it home with them just about, taking it slow. And as much as we needed to, there's been a day or a few days where we've had to drop it below 50 beats a minute, with a quarter note and an eighth note subdivision. But gradually just giving them that opportunity, that chance, pushing them here and there, maybe bumping up the tempo without them knowing it a little bit. Just so that they can, gradually build up that confidence. And I think that's really at the basis of this kind of, technical preparation for note accuracy and rhythmic accuracy is confidence. You have to build their confidence with what they're reading. And there's different techniques that I use, just like how I do, like the gradual upping of the tempo. I may pull a measure that they know already and say, here is this measure. Now look at this measure. What is different about it? And so I try to use that whole visual concept, or what's similar. So,
I use contexts.
And, I try to use my whiteboard pretty often, actually. I use my whiteboard just to show them like the actual logistics of a measure or a rhythm or notes, just so that they can, visualize it and not just be like, oh, this is some kind of out of body experience. So that's pretty much what I do. I just show them more often than just tell them, just because I feel like that's how I learned best. I feel like these kids are always on their phones. They're always looking at stuff. And so the visual aspect to it is very important to what I think is, successful literacy.
One final really quick thought. Have students compose music.
Yep.
Yeah,
that just has them apply what they know. Yep. And,
It's another depth of learning.
Yeah. It's another level.
Depth of knowledge. There you go.
It's another level.
As many contexts as possible.
Extremely, extremely invaluable.
Andrew, the next three.
Precision, entrances, and releases, baby. They're each on the sheet, for those who aren't listening from Florida, if you are, is 3 different captions. For precision, bopping. Just bop it. When in doubt, bop it. You're not in time, bop it. Not together, bop it. Not listening, bop it. Can't find the melody, bop it. It's just bop it. Just bop it. And if you don't know what
bop it,
oh, they make that joke all the time. Twist it, punch it, and I'll stab it. And they're like, okay.
Can you explain bopping real quick for people that may not know what that is?
Yeah, so bopping, guys, is like, let's say you got four measures of whole notes. Bopping is you would just play the start of each note. So instead of playing da, da, is da, da, and you would play the passage like that. The reason for that is to make sure that it's, for precision, for the sake of precision, it's making sure that everyone's lining up and they're attacking at the same time, and they're starting at their notes at the same time. It's also, you can help it with terms of musical clarity, because if you've got, you're playing a whole note and then there's an eighth note line somewhere, you'll find it. You as the tuba player will find it if you don't have it yourself. And so then it teaches students when to adjust their volumes based off of, harmonic balance. And musical balance. And then it also, in addition to making sure they're lining up at the same time, you can ensure that students are articulating in the same way. Because I tell them, what I explain to students, precision is doing it. It's not just what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. Is everything lined up the way it's supposed to be? In the same way at the same time. Is like, did you all buy red shirts, or did you buy the same red shirt? And are we all washing our clothes the same way, so no one's shirts get any bleached.
That's a good analogy.
For entrances, breathe together, play together.
Breathe in time, play in time.
Yep, breathe in, I say both of those things. Breathe in time, play in time. Breathe together, play together, and it's just a matter of reps. Making sure. I tell students, it takes it takes 2 beats to establish tempo. Beat 1 is the breath. Beat 2 is your entrance. If both of those things are in time, you will be in time. And you're better off that way. And we just rep it. And then for releases, releasing with the breath. You also release in time. When you release with the breath is in time. Making sure that we're all good. And then we talk about the release points. What I'll do is I'll draw the ictus and the release of the conducting pattern on the board, and I tell them where you release is directly correlated to where you sit in the balance pyramid. The higher you release, the sooner you release. The higher you are, the sooner you release. The lower you are, the later you release. And this all happens within a fraction of a second. And then we practice it, and I draw it on the board so they can see exactly where it's supposed to go. And they'll always have that one, and just making sure releases happen with eyes up. Because if you're releasing with your eyes down, you don't know when you're releasing. And then we just rep it. But yeah, that's and you can rep it in different parts. Rep it in different parts of the music, rep it on a long tone, rep it on a release. And that's usually how I cover it in that order.
So again, another visual representation of what you want, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
so that's usually how I do it.
Yeah. That would be pretty much in line with what I do as well. I tell them, my go-to is, always for listening. You always want to use your ears. You always want to make sure that you're stretching, how you're listening, whether the environment that you're in the entire room, or the person next to you, or, the tuba sitting across the room from you. And I think that has a really big, implication on all 3 of these, precision, entrances, and releases. So I try to stress the listening aspect to it, because that just helps them create a more cohesive unit when they play. For precision, the bopping thing is also invaluable. I love it. I've always used it. In marching band is where it originated for me. Like, I think that was like the first time that we really did it. I think I did it actually probably in middle school, but that always stuck with me, that kind of alignment with each student. That way you can hear any kind of hiccups or anything like that. And then entrances, breathing goes into that as well. I don't really need to say anything more than what you said. That was pretty spot on with what I do. The whole breathing in time, playing in time. And then with releases, I do let them know that, from the very beginning, that tubas really should be the last voice heard in a release. Physically actually heard. You're going to hear, and I tell them, the physics to it, the higher instruments are going to carry further naturally because their vibrations of the frequencies are faster, and so they're going to last longer. So that's why it doesn't have to be at the same exact time as the tuba. That's why the tuba releases later than everyone else. Later, I'm putting quotation marks up, later than everyone else, just because that's what we want in that sonorous sound, that resonant sound. So I think I'm gonna steal that whole kind of ictus thing, just because I think that's another really good visual representation. You can show it to them where that point is, and because again, these kids are so analytical, they want to see it. They want to know what they're doing exactly, or how to do it exactly. And that's a good way to show them without exactly telling them how to do it. I don't want to give them the answer. I want them to figure it out after I give them information. So yeah. I'm definitely going to steal that.
Yeah, I like that as well. I like that
Thanks,
as well.
Guys.
For the some stuff you guys haven't mentioned. For precision and entrances. Well, I'm just trying to add variety.
I'm joking. What's up?
For precision and entrances, timing, obviously, and metronome practice. But I also sometimes will put the metronome on every other beat or the start of each measure. I'll set the tempos different ways as we get closer to a performance, so they rely less and less on it. Sometimes I'll keep the metronome going, but I'll turn the volume down. And then when I feel they are off tempo, I'll turn it back up so that they can hear how, not just whether or not they're speeding up or slowing down, but how, their precision is lacking in that way. Another thing I started using this school year, or that I used to use a long time ago, and I stopped when I adopted the Eastman counting system, but I'm bringing back, is clapping, which is like bopping, but just with your hands, obviously. It's really useful when you have a lot of syncopated or isolated eighth notes or upbeats and things like that. Clapping is really good. That's also good for entrances. And then overall, just recording the group and then having them listen for the precision, for the starts and the releases is very, very eye-opening for them.
Last topic is what, Mr.
Interpretive articulation and clarity of articulation.
Bet.
So that's interpretive articulation and clarity of articulation. Both of these are, it's funny because I think I talked about physical articulation earlier. So now I get the other side of it. So let's talk about the first half, the interpretive articulation. That's going to be, any kind of legato, staccato, marcato, accents, any kind of those articulations. Again, I use a visual chart that I was given, I think in high school, where it shows you the kind of, like the air, like it's kind of, I'm trying to find a way to describe it.
It had like blocks.
Yeah,
and then
it's blocks.
In,
and then
the block is the beat, and then it colors in the articulation.
Yeah.
So like sometimes it looks like a football, sometimes it's like it starts, and then it rounds out. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I show them that. I think this week I'm going to print it out and give it to all of them, just so that they have it in their binder. I think that, more or less when you tell them that, how to, properly pronounce an articulation, they kind of look at you funny and they're like, why do I need to say it like that? But, when they know how to properly say the articulation, they can apply it better. So we spend a good amount of time going over how to properly say it. I think it also helps in jazz band too, because there's so many different articulations in jazz band that
articulation is huge in jazz band.
Oh yeah,
It takes the jazz. It's what dictates the jazz style. I tell the kids that's the difference. It's just articulation.
So that topic of interpretation of different articulations is extremely important. And so with clarity, we work on, and it really is about reps, trying to get that sound, trying to get the correct sound, maybe recording and having them listen back. Always helpful. Because we can hear it. We also do down the line. That helps sometimes, where I'll find someone in a section that I walk around and I'll listen and I'll be like, wow, that sounds really good. Let me have you model real quick for it, or I'll model it, and we'll try and get each individual to sound within a fraction of a percent of margin of error from each other. If not exactly alike. So that clarity of articulation only happens when everyone is on the same page. And I try to give them those exercises, either it's in the book or if we're doing something in the music, I'll pull a section out and we'll rep it just over and over and over again. For me, the repetition thing is extremely important when it comes to clarity. Especially for those kids that don't really have it yet. But that's pretty much it for me on interpretive and clarity of articulation.
Yeah, so I think interpretive articulation is basically just summed up in how you interpret the articulation markings, and does your band accent the way an accent should sound and things like that. And also, is it in the style of the piece or the time period of the music, things like that. And then as far as clarity goes, I had a thought. We talk about increasing the clarity of our ensemble is getting all the students to have the same tone. All the clarinet players in the section more or less sound the same, but are they articulating the same? So do all their accents sound the same? Do all their staccatos sound the same? I think that plays into clarity of articulation as well. That's all I have on that.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Whenever we talk about clarity in any caption, clarity is, are we the same? I tell the kids interpretive articulation lens is one of the hallmarks of box 2, because box 2 is all about what's on the page. And you have to, box 1 is the sound, box 2 is what's on the page, box 3 is how do you make box 2 sound good. And so interpretive articulation is teaching them the different ways of articulation, like AJ said, lots of reps, and then just telling them it's on the page, you got to do it that way. And when you take it to assessment, they're going to look at it and say it's a da, you put it as a dot, it's wrong.
It's almost like mispronouncing a word, or like giving a word different emphasis or something like that. So I try to tell them that.
Yeah, and so I tell them play it as it's written, play it all the same, and that's 1 and 2 for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
Well, that was a fun chat, guys. We got all the way through box 2, and
is that all the way done?
Part of box 1. Yeah, that's all of it.
Yeah.
So next time we'll talk about box 3, and then maybe next time we can also do a little catch-up episode and talk about all those things we wanted to talk about at the start of the episode.
Yeah, I think the
air our grievances, things like that.
Sure. I don't know about airing grievances. It's like it's like a Festivus. The airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people, and I'm gonna tell you about it.
Right, but it's just not with each other, but just in life in general. We're all commiserating. Yeah.
Sure.
All right, guys. Well, this has been Fundies Part 2, the Florida Band Podcast. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, take care.
Bye.
See ya.